I'll give you a shout then. Oh, no, she started. It's okay. It's fine. Hello, Helen.
Hi, hello everyone. Don't know if you can hear me. I'm just in the car, but I'll be stopping in a minute.
Every meeting I've been on, Helen, you've been in the car.
I know. Last night, the governing body, I wasn't in the car. For not the governing council members. I was baking last night.
Oh, you're baking. Sorry. Right. Okay.
And then I was in the car. So
okay. Yeah. Hello, Carol. Fresh from the was it the expo down in Liverpool?
Yes, I've almost run all the way along the dockside just to get to my friend's flat. So
okay,
apologies
right,
for being a little bit late.
No, nice to see you. We've not started yet. Right. I am going to start now though. I don't know if anyone else. I keep getting these little email notifications that pop in as just the cover of parts of my screen. Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to what will be the final North Cumbria CCG governing body meeting. And I'll get the opportunity at the end just to say a few thank yous, but I don't want to really mess about today, to be fair, because I know I'm very conscious there are a number of our governing body colleagues who need to be somewhere at 3 o'clock, which is a very important meeting, and it's to deal with the future. So we've got a bit of a clash of the past or the ongoing with the future, but we will make sure that we finish by 3 o'clock. I know that Mark needs to leave as well at 2 because he's got some other things that obviously going to take up his time in relation to the new organisation. So I just wanted to go through the sort of format. I've got some apologies here. So we've got Deb Lee, we've got Louise Mason-Lodge, we've got Denise, Leslie, Gareth Coakley, and who are non-governing body members. We do have Peter Scott and Suzanne Hamilton. I don't think there's anybody else. Have I missed anybody there by any chance? No, thanks, Brenda. Declarations of interest. Is there anything at all on here that people want to raise now? I don't think there is going through. I mean, we're not after making a lot of decisions today. It's mostly just going through the format and the administration, but there is an assurance approval needed for the framework, for the assurance framework. Okay, so just going through then and excuse me as I look towards another screen. I've got my notes up on one screen and obviously yourselves on the other. The minutes of the last meeting, just in terms of accuracy, is everybody comfortable with those? If there's anything on any of the pages, I say I won't go through them page by page, but please shout up if there's anything. Okay. So, right, okay, we'll accept those as accurate. Thank you. They were the minutes from the 19th of May. There are no actions from that meeting at all. So we don't need to sort of pull anything up, but is there anything that's not on the agenda that people want to bring up as a matter arising that's not going to be covered elsewhere? Charles, go ahead.
It is going to be covered elsewhere, but it's just a reminder to me, and if you could remind me, John, in case I forget, it's just when I give the financial update, just there's been some movement in the overall sort of financial planning process. So I'll give an update on that on the finance update, but it was just as a reminder, so I don't forget.
No, that's all right, and that's to do with the ICB financial planning process. Yeah. Okay.
But I'll also touch on how that impacts on the CCG as well.
Okay. Thanks, Charles. Appreciate that. Okay. So then we're just going to go on to the chair and accountable officer report. And just for those that weren't here when I mentioned it, before we do go on to that, is I'm very conscious that people need to definitely be out of this meeting by 3 o'clock. So we will finish it before then, both the part 1 and the part 2. I assure you. And if you don't, then it's my fault. But if we don't, then just leave anyway, because I know how important that meeting is. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to yourself, Mark, just to go through the chair and accountable officer report, and bear in mind that we did have one last month, so there's probably not a big amount on this, and bear in mind it is the last one as well. So I'll hand over, Mark.
Thanks for that, John. Yeah, just bearing in mind that we did have quite a more extensive one last month. On this one, ICB update. Yes, apologies, I do have to leave at 2 o'clock. As you can imagine, there is a huge amount of work going on in order to get to the place on the 1st of July. I'm confident that we will get to that place, and we will continue on everything under the auspices of a new organisation that will come into fruition on the 1st of July. Nevertheless, there is a huge amount of work going on. It is the case that we've just come to the end of a consultation process. So I know that it is still very challenging for colleagues, not least colleagues on this call here today. It is the case, though, that we do have an operating model that we've been talking about in all of the current CCGs. It is the case that many of the things that we needed to do to make sure that the ICB is in the right place in terms of things like becoming a Category 1 responder to emergencies. We've made huge progress on those things, so we are fully expecting to be in a good place for the 1st of July. Just a couple of other issues. West Cumberland Hospital development, the bricklaying ceremony at the start of the construction of the new £40 million redevelopment in Whitehaven. Phase 2 of the plans, there, as you'll see, include replacing up to 40% of the original hospital. So we look forward to maintaining momentum with colleagues on all of those things. It's also the case that we've had a staff development day, our first face-to-face event at the Harrowby Community Centre just earlier on the 9th of June. And it was a session where people could come together and catch up with one another and reflect on the positive impact. And I have to say, it is absolutely amazing what this organisation has done over its years. And Paul and colleagues put together some fantastic videos that took us through many of the highlights of things that we've done, and it is amazing. And I guess just on that front, we did take the opportunity to thank all of our staff for everything that they've contributed on that day. We continue to thank them through to the end of this organisation, but it was really a great opportunity to get together. It was also the case that we did the Chris Buckingham Annual Award in memory of his passing, and presented a range of awards to colleagues. Congratulations to everybody that was nominated and had awards. Again, it was a great part of the day, and it was great to see members of Chris's family with us on that day. I think those are probably the main things that I'd like to highlight. John, is there anything that you would like to add?
No, I suppose just the only thing to mention is what was in the last report about the challenges faced within the hospital in terms of the flow through. That they've not really gone away, so there's still a lot of work going on with that, and just trying to get sort of more support and see if there's any other things that can be done that are not already being done to try and support it. So no, I think that's probably about it for the moment. Is there any questions from anybody at all that people want to bring up? Okay, right. Well, thanks for that, Mark. We'll note that report. I'm going to shift on to, this is the one item for approval that we've got today, to yourself, Charles, for the governing body assurance framework.
Well, there's nothing like going out with a bang, is there? So it's just, hopefully this won't be too contentious. People may recall probably this process slipped into abeyance somewhat during the COVID period, but we made a big effort in 21-22 to start a robust process that was overseen through our internal committee structure to develop and refresh the governing body assurance framework, which we've done and continued to do, and was approved here in January, and it's been to the audit committee as well. What we wanted to do today, as part of the sort of due diligence and handover process to the ICB, is just check that this documentation is up to date. Through the programme review group, we've been refreshing the risk register. We've also aligned this document to our OGIMs, so the team objectives and individual objectives we've got this year, to check they're aligned to our strategic priorities, and that this document continues to be linked to what I would call our key system priorities that we're working with partner organisations. We've had a look at that refreshed documentation. It's been slightly rushed because the normal course of action is this report would go to the executive committee first and then to the governing body, but owing to timing the final executive committees next week, we took it to the senior leaders meeting last week after the staff day that Mark's just described, to check people were generally happy with it, and they were, and hence it's come here for sign off. I guess the key issue here, and I'm sure we'll come onto it throughout the agenda, is a lot of the big ticket strategic items for North Cumbria continue, and with the organisational change, the subject matter of what we've got to address is still there. And you know, that was very much discussed at the full council of members with our GP colleagues last night as well. So I'll not say any more on that. Hopefully this will be relatively straightforward, but you never know. So thanks for that, John.
No, thanks, Charles. As I say, we're not sort of got to dot every I and cross every T on this. I think it's a question of, like saying, is this a document that's fit for purpose to take us through the due diligence process and give that marker in the ground for when we move to the ICB. So any questions or comments from anybody on this? No. Okay. So, I mean, we are asked to consider approval of it based upon the work of the senior management team. And so I just need a proposer, seconder, and then we'll just, yeah, so proposed, obviously, Charles, yourself, seconded by Carol. Any abstentions from that? No, we're all in approval, all in agreement. Okay, thank you for that. Going to move on now to the North East Ambulance Service. It's a verbal update, Mark. Just want to about the situation over in the North East, but I'll let you articulate that, please.
Thanks, John. So colleagues will remember from the last governing body meeting that it was the expectation that we'd be at the point where we could bring a paper to North Cumbria. Just reflecting on the fact that this is the North East Ambulance Service, and the great majority of our service comes from NWAS. Nevertheless, it is of interest to us. We aren't at the point where we have a paper to be able to bring to governing body. It is still the subject of an ongoing review. I'm sure colleagues will have seen that there's been continued press coverage and media coverage about it. And that review is ongoing, but unfortunately we're not at that position where we were able to bring a definitive paper. So it is, but it also will become formally a continued process that will be picked up by the ICB when that comes into place on the 1st of July. Very happy to answer questions, John, if people have any.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Are there any questions or comments? I mean, again, I think the main point, as Mark as stated there, is our services come from primarily North West Ambulance Service, but as we are part of a wider framework and will be in the future for the North East North Cumbria ICB, it's important that these things are touched upon at least. But well, I'm sure whatever group will await the report from NIAS in terms of the ICB, and we'll leave it at that, Mark, if that's okay. Okay, thanks very much. Mark, you're on again with due diligence submission.
Thanks, John. As colleagues will remember, we're going through a huge process in terms of our due diligence for the close down of CCGs and the opening of the new organisation. In general terms, we, like every other CCG in the system, are well advanced in that and well placed to play our part in terms of that. It is the case, though, that we need to consider where we are in terms of risks and where we are in terms of reporting those. And we have a governing body assurance framework as part of our due diligence process that we'll be handing across to the ICB. You'll remember that this in particular allows us to enable that the CCG has demonstrated good governance. It provides a framework to ensure that organisations retain a focus on the key strategic aims during the transition process. And as we've discussed many times before, part and parcel of all the work that we're doing is to maintain momentum in terms of everything that we're trying to do for our public and patients, but it is also to ensure that we're not losing sight of quality issues, risk issues, etc. And this is part and parcel of that kind of framework, and it does enable then a good and governant handover process. This assurance framework is a list of key strategic risks facing the organisation, so it is different to our risk register that identifies operational risks, and it is something that has gone through a Finance and Performance Committee in May 2022 as well. So we brought it here for consideration of governing body. Just before we open it up, Charles, is there anything that you want to add to this?
I'm on mute. Not particularly, Mark. I think it's been, you know, we've had the parameters. Every CCG is working to the same ones. We worked through them. There's been a huge amount of collective work with all the CCGs working together to get a common approach, which is key. And just to flag as well, some of the issues handover. So we have to do a set of accounts at the 30th of June, get my days right, that we can't complete till after the 30th of June. And also we have to do, well, it's termed an annual report, but I would call it a report for the quarter as well, which is a retrospective look of what we do. And again, that will be something we'll have to complete after the date. So I think it's just to say there is work to do with the handover that the CCG won't complete, but that is due to the timing of that work rather than any sort of problems with the systematic approach.
Okay,
thanks, Charles. John, can we come back to you?
Yeah, thank you. Any comments, questions from colleagues? I mean, certainly from the lay members, we know that this has been going through the process, and we do get a regular update, as you said, Mark, at Finance and Performance. So there's nothing in there that's a surprise for anybody. Right. Okay. Well, we are just to note that for our information. So we shall do that. So we know where we're going, and it's been a very useful report. And actually, just to see the letter mark, I think provides that assurance as well that you've signed and obviously sent to Sam. Okay, going to move on now to the CLIC annual report, and Suzanne's not able to make it today. So Peter, I believe you've sort of picked that up for her, just to sort of talk through anything you want to pick up on her behalf.
Yeah, thank you, John. So apologies from Suzanne at very short notice, but you've already received the report. It's very consistent with the annual report that CLIC produce every year, so it follows the same kind of format. Lots of great information there about the Learning Improvement Collaborative offer. So obviously, a lot of the CLIC work is hosted by our clinical commissioning group, but very much works on a whole system basis. And indeed has been successful in previous years at attracting quite a lot of additional investment and funding to North Cumbria, for example, through the Academic Health Science Network and others. The annual report always feels a little bit, as soon as it's done, it's kind of out of date. This is the nature of these things, isn't it? Because there's quite a lot in there about the lock event last year, not the one that we just had, which I think everyone who was involved would have reflected was a great success. So I don't think there's any decision to be made here. There's no action. But Chair, we always bring the CLIC annual report for full update to the governing body, but also to make this publicly transparent and accessible. And my own feeling about CLIC is we might never arrive at a point where everybody is happy with how we're taking forward improvement work and everybody universally endorses the training programs, etc. But if you look at how many people have participated in Click improvement work and the work that they've then taken back into their organisations and systems to improve things for service users and the population, I think we really should just reflect how fantastic that's been. The Click team have had a lot of changes over this year. Some people left, multiple concurrent maternity leaves, some challenge around sickness, all of those things that people have to cope with. But they've done a brilliant job in delivering this programme over the year. I think we should just receive the report and we should just credit them for the work. And there are probably questions colleagues might have about what happens to Click in the future. So there's definitely an ongoing conversation to be had with the ICB about how Click can be sustained. And in some ways, Click is the rest of the North East have some envy about Click because they don't quite have something comparable. And I think it is one of the things from our system that we can take into the broader ICS arrangements as a real piece of good practice that could be shared. And I do know that after we've considered this item today, Chair, then between Mark, Suzanne and I, we will make sure that we share the Click annual report with the ICB leadership as well. I think it's something appropriate to share with them so they can understand the work. And I know that Suzanne's actually personally had a conversation with Sam Allen, the Chief Exec Designate, about the work around Click. So we would be hopeful this is something we can sustain, share, build upon. But I think for today, looking back on the annual report, we should just commend the work. I'll stop there, Chair.
Thanks, Peter. I totally agree with you. Any comments, questions from anybody about the report? No, okay. And I think, oh, sorry, go on, David.
Well, hi, thanks, John. Peter's kind of answered it. I mean, my question was definitely going to be about the future of Click, but it sounds like there is a level of uncertainty, but there is some, conversations that's taking place about how do we sustain the activity. So I think I've got the answer. It's not an ideal answer because it would be nice to know that the work was sustained and committed to, but it is what it is. Thanks, Peter.
I think just to give a little bit of transitional reassurance, really, David. So the team that are in place now will still be in place post transfer on the 1st of July. All of the programmes and training that's already been committed to will be delivered. There's no cliff edge danger of any of this work stopping. But there is a developmental conversation about how do we take this forward and ensure it's there on a sustainable footing, which I think we will want to share with partner organisations, including yours, David.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for that as well, Peter. And again, so go on, Mandy.
Yeah, so I suppose the only other thing, I mean, obviously we're talking ICB here, aren't we? But I suppose as well, I don't know whether it's been discussed with the provider collaborative as well, because the other people that have benefited from Click have been the foundation trust. So maybe that's another conversation. I don't know whether, Mark, whether that's something that's been considered. But certainly I know a lot of NCIC projects have certainly benefited from the Click improvement tools and the approach as well that's been taken.
Okay, I think that's got that, yeah. And I'm just going to maybe echo a couple of things that Peter said, and I wanted to personally thank Suzanne for her work in leading the team, and not only leading this team, but also as well the support she's given to me for the partnership development, which sort of fits into the work of Click. Has been really, really, really helpful. And I agree, Peter. It's one of those things. Don't throw it away until you understand it and see how then it can fit into a wider ICB proposal, because there is definitely a place for this type of activity. Because if we don't do this type of activity in the ICB, we'll just be a series of organisations that are not really working together in a developmental way. We'll be you're going, oh, you do this, you do that. What Click does is it makes people think differently from a system perspective. So fully commend it. Okay, right. we'll note that. We'll receive that report. I'm going to pass over to yourself, Nikki. And for those that have had the benefit of reading the report and the presentation, Nikki's not going to go through every slide. We've had a bit of a chat about that, so it's really there for your information. But I'm going to hand over to you, Nikki, for pull out any bits that you just want to pull out from it.
Yep, thank you very much, John. So actually you have two reports. You have your usual RAG rated summary table that you're familiar with, that we've produced before. And in that we've highlighted the areas where there are sort of the pressured ones in the constitutional targets, which there are all pressured, with the exception of the 104-week weights, which is the only area that's green in that RAG table constitutions. So you'll be aware that the main area of our focus has been around the quality and safety of the impact on the 12-hour waits in the emergency departments. So we've highlighted that in the report, and we have carried out 2 commissioner assurance visits to both sites recently, and are assured that people are putting in place the mitigations and trying to minimise any harms from those long waits. So people are actually being looked after well in terms of having pressure area care, food, hydration, and having their treatments. So that's the main focus of that sort of work we've been involved in. There are obviously some other areas of concerns that you're all very familiar with around the long waits, the elective care, potential harms from diagnostics, and then more recently we've had the safeguarding team experiencing some key staff shortages as well. So that's really all I was going to raise from the RAG table, but it's there in terms of our executive summary that you can see. But moving on to the second paper that John alludes to, this is a new paper that you haven't seen before, and it's really a look back, an annual quality review. We've presented it in a slide deck format this time, and this report, this slide deck, has been examined at length and worked on with our outcomes and quality group, and they've helped to shape and input into each stage of it and its development. So a huge thanks to Carol, Denise, and Deb for their input, because they've certainly spent a lot of time helping us with this. So although the group really likes the slide deck format, because it's very visual and it's easier to read than a very lengthy wordy report, I would say though that it does mean that it's been very hard to include any amount of detail. So some of the slides are, in order to be pictorial, they haven't got the detail in, but others we've tried to put some detail in and then they're very wordy. So but just to say, it isn't meant to be presented as a presentation, it's meant to be read as a sort of an easy read summary, if you like. And also that there isn't any information in this that should be new to you. You should already have been cited on this. It's all the stuff that's been coming through to governing body and outcomes and quality previously. So you will have had the detail underneath these highlight slides. But in terms of what I'd wanted to pick out, it's very hard to actually pick out any sort of 1 or 2 areas, because as you can see, it tries to celebrate the work that's been undertaken over the year. And it tries to highlight some of the achievements along the way and trying to start to look at how we can make a difference. We've picked out some areas around co-production that you'll be familiar with, and how we've worked with our sort of hard to reach groups. Obviously our successes around the vaccine rollout, and more recently our successes around the continuing healthcare teams review work. But I suppose in particular the bit that we're probably most proud of, if you like, that we'd like to pick out is the work that we've done with the care homes. And I think, just alluding back to what John was just saying and Peter in the last report, we've worked really closely with CLIC in our work on the care homes, and I was just going to sort of say that, you know, without them it would have been really hard to actually sort of engage across the system with the work that we've done. So we have been able to put out a very broad series of webinars to our care homes, and we've had help from CLIC and other partners around end of life and things. So that's been really a useful sort of tool to use, and it's been well received. And we've also had supported them through what's been quite a challenging year, and we've supported them with the enhanced care home actions as well, and in particular with the pilot of the new Health Call app, which is a sort of new initiative using iPad technology, if you're not familiar with it. We've been piloting it through CHOC in the first instances, and now starting to roll it out through the ICCs. And it's where you can actually sort of input through an iPad directly into sort of a triage system with CHOC or with direct to the ICCs, where you can input News 2 type scores and put some medical information observations in there, and then you'll get triaged in medical opinion straight away. So we now have, the report alludes to 30 homes, which is now actually, I can report as of today, it's actually 70 homes are live and trained on that system, which actually covers 85% of our care home beds. So they're doing really well to roll that out have CHOC, and we're very proud of that. That's just one example, though, in what I could have teased out, numerous of them. I think what I want to say overall is that the teams have worked really well together across the CCG and with providers and with third sector and local authority to try and achieve some successes in what's been a difficult year. I'm proud of the sort of energy and enthusiasm and willingness to learn and improve that I've seen and to change things for the better. So I'm sure, like the previous report, you'll want to sort of recognise that work that's gone into it. So I'm happy just to take questions on particular bits, really, John.
Okay, thanks for that, Nikki. I was going to bring yourself in first, Carol, as I say, chair of the committee that looks at these things. Anything you wanted to add?
I think that Nikki's covered it very comprehensively, but it was very much a team effort. And it's great to actually have this annual report as we go into the new organisation, because this is part of our due diligence and our legacy, I think. So I think it's also very timely as well. So thanks to Nikki and the team for pulling together what is a very comprehensive and detailed report. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. David?
Thank you, John. Yeah, Nikki, I just wanted to dwell for a moment on the 12-hour waits, which obviously is a worry and a kind of an upward trend in the number of people that are having that experience. And I guess, we carried out some work recently around A&E attendance and why people end up going to A&E. We've done that in North Cumbria before, but we've just done that work in South Cumbria and Lancashire. And what we were hearing time and time again was that lengthy waits in A&E, even on trolleys in cubicles, is an incredibly distressing space for people to have to be in. And people talked particularly around two or three things, several things actually, but the lack of information, that they feel a sense of helplessness and out of controlness, because their lives are almost in the hands of unknown people that aren't sharing information very readily. A lack of privacy and dignity around really difficult and sensitive conversations over a long period of time. And things like really basic things like getting some rest is really difficult, because you've got what feel like forensic lights above you, and a lot of noise in a department, and food and basics like food and drink and comfort and so on. So I guess, it's reassuring to know that you feel that people are getting good care in that in that instance. But I wonder if we could reflect a little bit more on how do we know that all of those things I've just described are really been taken care of as best as possible for people whilst they're in that really vulnerable state.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I was just going to say to David, just that's obviously in relation to what happened in South Cumbria, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of those things are happening as well. So the report is available, David, then on your website, and be useful if you could.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were commissioned by the ICB to do a piece of work across all Lancashire A&Es.
Okay.
And it's very current and recent, but yeah, the themes will be universal, I would imagine.
So I was saying it might be useful just to, if we can, David, just send a copy across to Nikki, so at least she's got that to see some of those things. So I'm sure, as I said before, some of those things might be happening. Go ahead, Charles.
Thanks, John. All I was going to say is I'll pick up some of the more macro issues on performance in the next part of the meeting, but just to flag, David makes a very relevant point, because I think when we look at the performance, we tend to look at how the system is working as a whole. And I think at this part of the agenda, it's when we're looking at quality, it's very important we consider the individual patient experience in the context of that wider system. So just to sort of make the distinction that it's right and proper we're talking about those things now. Just to say.
Thank you, Charles. Appreciate that. Is there any other question or comments that people want to bring up? Okay, because I think what you've done is we know that quality report goes through your group, your committee, Carol, and you've seen those things. And as you said before as well, Nikki, a lot of the things that are in the annual report are things that have already been through there, and it's just a culmination of the things for the end of year report. But I particularly, I have to say, I commend. There's many things to commend, but I commend you on the care home work, because I always think they're a part of our system that doesn't get as much credit, be as much engagement and integration into part of a wider system, where actually they're absolutely crucial, as we found out during the pandemic, but absolutely crucial. So the fact that we're doing that work and trying to pull in and work with organizations that are sometimes singular, sometimes bigger, I think is commendable, and I think we can only do more of it. Okay, I'm going to finish there unless there was anything from anybody else. No.
John,
okay.
I wonder if Nikki, I suppose I was asking for some assurance from Nikki that we've looked at some of those things. I don't know if Nikki, you're able to give any of that assurance.
Okay,
yeah,
thanks, David.
Absolutely, yes. So yes, David, I was going to come back in. Sorry, but so I would absolutely agree with what you're saying, David, and with the findings that you allude to, and that certainly was our major concern going into to do the visits. But what I will say is a commissioner assurance visit is a one-off snapshot visit. It's what we see on the day that we're there. And we had quite a lot of assurance from the trust beforehand around the measures that they put in place, and we took along lay members with us to the visit, so it wasn't just our team. And really what we found was that they had given a lot of thought to some of these issues. I'm not suggesting that they could have solved them all by any means, and one would expect on another day you would find people saying the same things that you found in that report. But on the day that we went, and it was a very busy department, and the people that we spoke to, there were a large number of them had been waiting a long time. But we didn't hear absolutely anything, even with detailed questioning, that led us to believe that they weren't getting information. They felt their relatives were either with them or they had spoken to them. They felt that they had access to food and drink, and that we saw the food trolley there. We saw chilled drinks being given. The privacy and dignity was an issue. There were people that were being nursed in the corridor, and we did flag that in our report, that obviously that's not satisfactory in any way. But really, I think what heartened us was that the people that we spoke to were very happy with the care that they were getting. They felt that their needs were being met very compassionately, and there was a lot of energy in the team to try and solve this problem. And I think that the nurses particularly went into sort of nursing ward mode, so they were looking after them as much as they could to make it a ward environment, if you like, albeit comments around the lighting are absolutely apparent. Certainly 2 or 3 people I spoke to felt they had been admitted to a ward. They didn't realise that we're still in A&E, if you like. So it is about perception, and I think on any day you'll get good and bad feedback. But certainly on the day we went, it was very reasonably positive. They had tried hard to mitigate.
Okay, thanks, Nikki. Thanks for the question as well, David, and the input was really appreciated. Okay, happy to move on. We know the report, and we're going to go on to performance report for yourself, Charles.
Thanks, John. Again, a bit like the last report, this report, and indeed May's report, have been considered by the Finance and Performance Committee. A lot of these issues are long-standing, although we are starting to see some actions like the work on dementia, where we've done some root cause analysis and perhaps identified why there was a problem with the referrals and how it was all working, which has been positive, and Mandy's been very instrumental in that. I would also just highlight some of the problems we face in North Cumbria are definitely national. So people might have seen in the press today, there's been issues about ambulance services. If you look at the figures for NWAS and similar ones in May, they are challenged in North Cumbria. The standards are not generally being met, but to be fair, they're much closer to being met than across the rest of the patch, as the resource shows. And again, we've also done benchmarking with NIAS, and generally compared to the averages for NIAS, certainly patients in North Cumbria are getting a better response. And similarly, while to come back to the point I made previously, for individual patients there will be some long waits, but generally on average the handovers are perhaps less than the seen elsewhere. Similarly, again, stuff in the press, just on the BBC website today, about waiting for elective care. If you're on the list, nearly made a song, you're actually 1 in 9. 6.5 million people in England waiting for waiting for a procedure. North Cumbria as a trust have been successful in reducing the 104-week waiters, getting down to nil at March. They continue to work on managing elective care. They've been able to secure further support for diagnostics in the short term from the independent sector, which is good. They've put a business case forward to develop a community diagnostic centre, and they're using, as much as anyone understands it, the elective recovery fund to do things like the marathon weeks where they're trying to get through patients, allow people to be treated more quickly. That wasn't put very well. On top of that, there is an initiative that's going on across the North East and North Cumbria called Waiting Well, which is all about trying to provide support for those patients on the list to avoid their condition deteriorating, and try and support them as much as they can. I think the biggest area which we just touched on where North Cumbria is definitely an outlier is on those waits in A&E, the 12-hour waits that we've just been discussing. And I think what's important in terms of the continuity moving from the CCG to the ICB, that this is definitely a baton that is being picked up by the ICB. We've spent quite a lot of time at the system executive this meeting. The designate and incoming ICB chief executive has asked for a stock take on the position in North Cumbria. That will be going in I think tomorrow, and it's a joint effort by all the parties. It's not trying to if you like, apportion blame. It's trying to say what things are, and so people who are perhaps not as familiar as we are with the circumstances in North Cumbria can get a background. But more importantly, what things are there that we're not able to necessarily support on our own, and what would our asks of the ICB be to enable things to change? That might be perhaps some sort of capital ask to see can we improve our facilities, but also issues on supporting the medical workforce and other things we can do better. So I think it's really important to acknowledge everyone knows this is a big challenge, but as we, if you like, complete our time as a CCG, almost the names above the door may change, but the issues don't, and neither does that sense of this is really important, this is really challenging, and we need to do something about it. Because I think it's fair to say there are always things we can do better, but it doesn't feel to me like that's necessarily through want of effort, but perhaps someone else having a look at it from outside with a bit of headroom from being somebody pushed right on the front line dealing with the patients can perhaps give us a slightly different perspective. I think the other bit to note is that in terms of A&E numbers, it isn't the number of patients who are presenting at A&E which is the issue. It's our ability for those patients to have an appropriate journey on a timely basis through the hospital, and that either onwards back home or indeed into an appropriate care setting. So that's very much on the agenda and continue. So I appreciate I'm not really talked about the report as such, but I think as a CCG and with that due diligence legacy type issue, it's more to flag that there is a continuity there. I don't think there will be any magic bullets, because if there were, we would have identified them. But nevertheless, there is that key understanding, and it's important to say we've tried to reflect this as a whole system in terms of providing some of the background. So recognise there are challenges in mental health, and indeed very significant challenges in primary care, particularly in the west of the county, that we've rehearsed on many occasions. So I just wanted to share that, John, because I thought in the context of where we are today, that might be more beneficial for discussion.
Okay, thank you, Charles. Questions or comments from people? Mandy?
Yeah, I suppose reflecting as well as we have in the clinical team, I suppose the other thing that these performance charts don't really help, so there's no narrative that kind of picks this up, is that the fact that if you're a patient with a long-term condition, then there's no doubt that during the COVID pandemic, some of those things that you would normally have had access to, like your annual reviews, physically there at the practice, weren't happening as often as they would have done pre-COVID. So we've got to ask ourselves clinically what impact that some of that has had on people's health generally, particularly if you have a long-term condition. So there's not just a backlog within the hospital elective waiting list, there's also a backlog within primary care as well. And I know our GP colleagues are working incredibly hard to overcome that backlog, but that is going to take a long time to actually to turn around. So I think it's worth kind of just flagging that now, John, because I think obviously if we can get that backlog sorted out as well, things like the patient flow should see a positive impact as well, because some of those patients turning up are going to be those where maybe their condition has worsened during the COVID pandemic because of that issue. And hopefully as we all start to get back on track over the next couple of years, things like that patient flow will start to ease down as well.
Thanks, Mandy. Any comments from others? Questions? No, that was very useful, Charles. And I know when we had the finance and performance just recently, we did also talk about, you know, apart from A&E and apart from flow and the waiting times, there was the fact that there's a cancer plan in place with NCIC, and because that's another key area for people at a very particular traumatic and vulnerable period in their lives. So that there's work ongoing. It's sometimes some of these things are just not shifting as quickly as we'd like them to be honest. Because it does, as Mandy says, it does impact on individuals and their families very, very strongly. Sorry, Mandy, did you want to come back with something?
So yeah, I was just sorry, I've mentioned this before as well. I think that the real positive that we have in here in North Cumbria, there, and I know we talk about it every time we have a meeting, is the amazing work around health pathways that Helen and her team have led. Because despite COVID, that piece of work got off the ground in an amazing pace. And that is definitely starting to have an impact now at the front line. It's helping clinicians to get the right care for their patients. It's brought together primary and secondary care on a level that we haven't seen for a long time in working on those pathways together. And I think that needs to be applauded. And I'd like that to, that's certainly the legacy as far as North Cumbria CCG is concerned. The other area that I'm maybe a little bit more anxious about is I think I know Gareth's been to governing body previously to talk about the digital strategy. Unfortunately, it doesn't feel to me as if we've made as much progress on that as we know we would have liked to have done. And I think as we move into ICB, I'm really hoping that that is something that's going to be picked up on a much, once we're on a much bigger scale, that we'll be able to move forward that at a pace, because that is something that we are definitely falling behind on in North Cumbria compared to other parts of the country. And that would help so many things, including the idea around safeguarding, because actually being able to have that information sharing there at the touch of a button, rather than having to make 5 phone calls to different people, could make such a difference to patient care, to making sure that they get the quality that they need, and but also to safeguard them as well.
Oh, points well made, Mandy. Colin?
Just to augment slightly the health pathways success that Mandy was talking about. Helen seems to have fallen off the meeting, but however, today the medical director of the trust informed the clinical leads that they were going to go ahead with hospital pathways as one of their priority areas, which we were very grateful to hear. Have to say that if he told us he wasn't, we'd have been straight back to Mark and Charles to get that decision undone. But however, they have made that decision. So what we are really hoping for now is a rapid progression of appointment to people, and I believe there are 200 hospital pathways in the pipeline to be worked through, so that's going to take a while. But I really do believe that not only is this something that we thank the team for and thank all of those folks who were involved in making the big decisions to go with this, but I do think it's something that we take into the ICS, John, with some deal of pride and even some confidence that we could assert that even though we have chosen a particular way of doing this, that all parts of the ICS should either adopt this way or something similar. It may be that this may be mandated nationally, but however, it's something to be celebrated for sure. Thank you.
No, thank you, Colin. I know a lot of people put a lot of effort into trying to land that alongside the community pathways, which have been going on for a number of years now. And specific thanks to Helen for leading that piece of work. Okay, is there anything from anybody else? Okay, well, we note the challenges and we note some of the developments and plans that are in place to try and deal with those. And specifically, I think, again, the point that Peter raised under the quality part around the report that's going to go for in terms of the stock takeover to Sam and the ICB in relation to where we are as a system. Mark, sorry, you wanted to say something?
John, apologies for interrupting the flow. I'm just conscious of time and the fact that I'll have to go in a few minutes. Yeah. Before I leave, I just wanted to say thank you to each and every one of you and governing body for everything that you have done over the years. This is our last meeting. And I know I did say this at the previous meeting as well, but I just wanted to say thank you for everything that you've done. You've all made a massive contribution to the continued development and support for services for the public and patients. You've all made a massive contribution to continuing to support our public and patients in improving their health outcomes and the care that they receive in Northumbria. And it's been an outstanding contribution. I just want to say thank you. And John, thank you in particular for your chairing of the meeting and everything that you have done outside the meeting in terms of bringing the system together, bringing leaders together across the system, galvanizing effort and focusing effort across the whole system. That has also been outstanding. So thank you very much indeed for that, John, and thank you all for your contributions.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I really appreciate that, and good luck in the next meeting, because I know that that's going to lead us somewhere else as well. So thank you. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Appreciate all of it on behalf of colleagues, and I will say something myself at the end of this section as well. But cheers, Mark. Are you off now? Or are you gonna? Yeah, you.
I will, if you don't mind, and then I can just work out
you can go. Get prepared.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Take care, Mark.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye. Okay. On to item 11, Charles. Finance update.
So I really will be brief with this one. The reason we haven't got a report is one of timing. With the June has that extra sort of week in, so we're a bit earlier in the month than we would normally be, and the impact of the change of the bank holiday at the beginning of June has meant the information for month 2 hasn't been ready. We did take it to Finance Performance Committee yesterday, and that showed the CCG against the CCG's approved budget was in balance. The issue I referred to earlier was just to I guess a bit of context on the finances. So the CCG's budget was based on the financial plan that the CCG submitted to as part of the collection of all the CCGs in North East and North Cumbria, which formed a part of a financial plan on the North East and North Cumbria footprint, along with all other ICB areas that had to be submitted on the 20th of April. Those plans went in, and nationally there was a significant deficit in the plan. So systems were asked to resubmit plans by the 20th of June. Work is ongoing. Part of the reason for such a significant deficit has been the big changes in the economy that we've seen since the figures were first put in, particularly the inflationary figures on things like fuel and utilities, and in the same way that we're all feeling the pinch in our pockets at home, clearly hospitals take a lot of heating, lighting, energy for sterilisation, all those things. So we're roughly a package of, I think 1.5 billion's been put into the NHS, which equated to about 90 million for our North East and North Cumbria patch. So that has gone a long way to getting us back to break even, because the costs have been reflected in the plans that we've done already. That they include not just inflation, but some pressures in the ambulance service, pressures in the care sector, and some specific ones where certain contracts like PFI hospitals, for example, have specific inflationary clauses in them based on either the consumer price index, the retail price index, that aren't common to everywhere. So there's been extra money for that. The flip side of that was that if those pressures were acknowledged, it is expected that other pressures could be contained to get each system to a break-even position. And if that wasn't reached, there would be significant intervention stroke support, with inverted commas, from the centre to investigate that. The consensus in our patch was that collectively that extra money and some other initiatives going on would get us to within 0.2% of our overall collective resource to break even. So we're working on, can we just make that final step as a plan, and how will it be allocated? So that process is going on at the moment, which will affect all parts of the system, including commissioner budgets. However, the new money has yet to be allocated to CCGs and the impact of that. So it's just to say, when we initially did the plan, we hadn't got Royal Assent to the bill, so we weren't 100% certain. We were expecting the new organisation to start on the 1st of July, but we weren't sure. That's definitely happening now. So all these changes will be put through the ICB's books rather than the CCG's, which actually I don't think there's another way we could do it, because we've set in effect a budget for the 3 months we've got, and we would only have 10 days to influence change on that. So it's right and proper that's happening. But again, I just thought it would be helpful just to inform the governing body of that process and how the CCG's figures fit into that. And as I mentioned earlier on the due diligence, that does mean we will have to do a set of a quarterly but formal accounts and reporting for the period as a CCG ending on the 30th of June. But it clearly, final approval for that won't be with the CCG, it will be with the ICB, because the CCG won't be about. But just again, that process has happened many times. Those people who've been around long enough to remember when CCGs were formed back in April 2013, the PCTs that finished at the end of March all did it report and accounts, and there was a process to get those signed off as well. So it's nothing new, underhand, or anything like that. And irrespective of that process, the health service continues, hopefully treating as many patients as it can. But for people like me, it's a bit of a headache. But you win some, you lose some.
Okay, thanks, Charles. I know, again, we discussed some of this detail as well yesterday, finance and performance, but is there anything from anybody else that people want to pick up? Okay, well, good luck with the money, Charles. I know it's forever been a challenge, without a shadow of a doubt. I know perhaps we're more challenged, you know, and I would say underfunded than other areas, but there you go. But I know it's something you work heavily on. Okay, getting towards the end of the sort of first part of the meeting. So I've just going to move on now to the minutes of the committee meetings and any relevant updates from committee chairs, just to receive these minutes. So anything from anybody on the finance and performance 20th of April they want to pick up? I've got nothing to say as the chair. No. Outcomes and Quality Committee minutes 2nd of March. No. Okay. Primary care committees, there's two, 20th of April, 18th of May. All I wanted to sort of pick out there was two things. One was obviously the 18th of May, we made a decision about Brough in terms of branch surgery, and that's still ongoing. And we did get an update at Primary Care Committee this week about where we're up to with that branch surgery closure. And then the other one was just around the future arrangements of primary care committees. I have to say, I'm probably feeling a little bit anxious about where it's going to end up, and it's work in progress. And we did get an update again at primary care, but it's one of those where, as a chair, you're leaving it and you're going, "Ooh, don't really know where that's going to end up." But that's not an issue for us as a governing body. It's for colleagues around this table, of course, that are on the screen to pick up. But yeah, it's one of those unanswered questions, which I'm sure will be resolved very, very quickly. Then the only other thing I wanted to bring in was, I know Brenda kindly circulated the approved minutes for the joint committee from the 12th of May. And it was just to sort of mention that those minutes are out there. The only thing of any interest was that there was an item about how to decarbonise general practice and the support that the ICS were offering for that, if that's of any interest to people from a GP world. Okay, so that was going to accept all of those. Brenda, have we got any questions from members of the public?
No, John, just before you move on, we were going to get delegated authority for the chairs to sign off minutes.
Yeah, I was going to do that. I was going to do that at the items of business. Is that okay? Is that okay? Is that okay? Yeah.
That's fine. And there's no questions from members of the public.
Okay, no problem. So that leads me on to item number 14, any other urgent items of business. There's a few things I want to say. Firstly, I'll deal with that administrative thing that Brenda's just mentioned. Are people quite happy, as I've been saying at most meetings, for me to sign these minutes off in conjunction with Brenda, so we've got those completed rather than going to another meeting that doesn't exist? So I've seen lots of thumbs up, and I know that. Okay, we'll take that's unanimously agreed by everybody. The second thing I wanted to mention, and is Julie still here? Julie, could you put yourself on the screen so I can see you? There you go. Hello. Right. Most people be aware that that tomorrow is Julie's last day with the CCG. And I know she's very kindly, even on her last day, doing a short presentation for me on the future of the ICB at the forum for Carlisle and Eden. So really appreciate that, Julie. But I just wanted to say a few words. I know I'm going to see you personally next week, and I know your team will all sort all the other things out. But just in terms of from a governing body perspective, Julie, you came into.
Don't be nice and make me cry, John.
That's okay. I will. You came into this organisation when we definitely needed some strong connectivity to our communities, and I know you came in around healthcare for the future and all of that stuff and success regime, but that was like manna from heaven for you as the individual that you are and the professional that you are, that you basically took that in a way that enabled us to create connectivity and communications and engagement with our wider public, and for them to feel valued. And it was a two-way process. It didn't happen overnight, but you worked so hard to do that, and you've taken your team and your role that you have to do so seriously. And for somebody that's, that's I'll say, I don't mean this as disrespect, supposed to just becomes an engagement. You know more than anybody else about what's going on at various times in this organisation and what's going on across the system. And I know that you do that. You do meetings with MPs, you do meetings with the community, you do meetings in wider forums, representing this area nationally, and representing this area obviously regionally as well. And you'll be an absolute miss in terms of what you've achieved. And I just wanted to say, from my point of view of chair and as a working colleague, and I'm sure I speak for everybody else, that we will miss you, but you're going to a role so closely connected to what you feel is important, But I just so pleased for the fact that that's what you're doing, and the chief executive. You know, who'd have thought that anyone would say, you know, Julie, you're a chief executive, and it's one of those strange places where you sometimes end up going, what are we going to do about this? And it'll be, well, that's down to me then, isn't it? So you'll be an absolute fantastic chief executive for that hospice and that organisation. And if you carry on working the way you do in this organisation, so I just wanted a big round of applause for Julie, please. So thank you.
That's very kind of you, John. I will just say, never underestimate the importance or the power of comms and engagement, and absolutely never underestimate the importance of connecting well with, collaborating with your community. And there are lots of people in this room who've sat through very uncomfortable positions when it's been absolutely the right thing to talk head on to our community about the challenges that we face. And I don't want to embarrass David as well, but you know, the connections with Healthwatch, the connections with our third sector are all really, really important. And I think there's fantastic opportunities in the ICB in the future for us to move from engaging with people to really involving them in the way that we make decisions about the services that affect us all. So thank you to everyone that's supported me. I know I come and ask people to do terrible things that they don't want to do, scary things, putting their names out there in the public, connected to things, but talking to the community is always the right thing. And thank you for being so open to do that. Thank you.
Well done, Julie. Well done, Julie. I just want to say a next sort of thank you, really, and again, that's to the lay members. And I wanted to read a few words out that I think will be probably echoed by everybody else. You know, Carol, Deb, John, Denise. But these are some things that Denise has said to me, and I thought I'll say them because I think they echo what we've all said when we've had our meetings as well. But she just wants to pass on a thanks for all the support and respect each member of this, you know, this organisation has had for the lay role, and obviously the secondary care doctor role as well, and what a privilege it's been working with such a dedicated, professional and passionate group of people. And she says she's personally learnt such a lot, and I believe we've come a long way as a governing body and as an organisation, never hiding from the difficult decisions, coming up with creative, relevant solutions to best match the needs of our community. And I, on behalf of all the other lay members, just want to wish you the best of future, and obviously in shaping healthcare. And she does make a particular plug, and I think we'd all agree, in helping to reduce health inequalities, so that you know, as a piece of work, that's a real challenge, I think, for all areas of the country, but particularly for us, obviously in North Cumbria. So I want to say that on behalf of lay members, and obviously the two of them here today, John and Carol. Thank you so much for your support to me as the chair, but also your support to this organisation as well. And then finally, before we just finish up, I just want to say a few words. So again, as chair, thank you. It's been such a privilege for me. I was involved with the CCG right at the very beginning in terms of shadow form in 2012, obviously in 2013 when we were formulated, and then obviously took over as chair when we moved to North Cumbria, as it were. And I can only say it's been a privilege and an honour, and the great work that's been achieved over the last nine plus years, key decisions that have been made. I'll refer to Healthcare to the Future before, but also not just things like that, but things like the implementation of ICCs, which I think was groundbreaking and still is, and still needs some work, but is the future way of how we are going to deal with it. And it is a challenging time coming up for this area as part of the wider ICB. We've got, I mean, structurally, we've got all the things that are happening with the local council reform, structurally around the things that are going to happen with the ICB, and again, personally, for a number of colleagues around this table who are going to sort of work out what their role will be in that new organisation. But it's not just that, but some of the things that we've spoke about today, about the real difficulties that we face in providing some health services across North Cumbria, you know, and that has been the case for a number of years now. And that's not going to go away in the short term. It's only going to increase. And I think there's work to do, obviously. And again, for me in my new role as a non-executive on the ICB, I will be a strong advocate for what goes on in Cumbria and the knowledge that I have from here, but also bear in mind I've got a wider role supporting the whole of the North East and North Cumbria in that board. But the experience for me has been absolutely fantastic. So I just wanted to thank you all for that. So I don't want to say too much more than that. I think I've covered everything I wanted to deal with. There isn't I like the bit that Brenda's put in there, date, time and venue of next meeting. well, this is the last meeting, so there isn't one. So there you go. So I wanted to close it there. Now, just in terms of the part two, which is very, very limited. What do we want to do? I was going to say, David, it won't be of any interest to you, David, because it's basically all it is just some meeting minutes. So